This is the exact method that I utilized in my mid to late 20s that helped me get out of that endless cycle of credit card debt. If you've watched any of my previous videos, then you've probably seen me discuss the fact that I was in credit card debt in my early 20s. I fell into that trap during my first few years of college, and by the time I graduated, I had dug myself in a hole financially that was difficult for me to get out of. Whenever I got my first job, I wasn't making a lot of money, so the most that I could afford at the time was the monthly minimum. And the problem with that is that monthly minimum payment that I was making would usually only cover the interest that was being charged to my account every single month. So my story is not that different from many people, especially young people that go to college and get themselves into debt, and then they find themselves with a large credit card bill that's extremely difficult for them to pay off. So this is a gold mine for credit card companies because people will go out and they'll buy a bunch of stuff that they don't even need, and whenever it's time to actually repay that debt, some people will either not pay their credit card bill and end up going into collections and ruining their credit, or they will just pay the monthly minimum like I did. But the problem with that is you get stuck in this endless cycle of paying the monthly minimum where your principal is not really going down and the entirety of your monthly payment is just going to interest. It's frustrating. Well, in today's video, I'm going to be going over the method that I utilized in my mid to late 20s that helped me pay off my high interest credit cards by using credit card companies to achieve this. Now, this will work for many types of debts. This will work for credit cards. This will work for loans or any other high interest debts that you have that you want to pay off. This method will work for that. So the very first thing that you want to do is you want to take inventory of all the loans, credit cards, or high interest debt that you have, and you'll want to make note of the interest rate for each one of those debts that you have. And I would suggest starting out that you just try to target one card at a time. So what I would do is I would make sure that I knew which card that I had that had the highest interest rate, and that would be the card that I would focus on right out of the gate. So once you've identified that credit card that you want to pay off, then the next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go online and you're going to do some research. So what you're going to do is you're going to go to a credit card company's website such as Barclay, Discover, or Capital One, and you're going to start researching 0% balance transfer introductory rate. So a lot of these companies will have an introductory period where they will offer a 0% interest on the entirety of a balance that you transfer over to their card. I've seen credit card companies offer 0% interest from 12 months all the way up to 24 months. So make sure that you do your research and that you find the credit card that is currently offering the longest introductory period that is available. And the next thing that you're going to want to start researching is you're going to research the fees that are associated with the balance transfer. So credit card companies will typically have a fee associated with transferring a balance over to their credit card. And the fee that I've typically seen was around 4%. Now I know that could have changed since I did this quite some time ago, but I have a few friends that I have shared this process with, and they were able to use it, and I believe that they said that it was 4% was still the norm. If you find a credit card company that has a 0% introductory rate for their balance transfer and the fee is over 4%, my suggestion would be that you continue to research to find a better rate. So one of the questions that I typically get whenever I'm discussing this balance transfer strategy to pay off credit card debt is people will say, well, what about the 30% utilization cap that most people suggest that you stay under in order for it not to impact your credit score? Now, I will say that that's true. You typically want to keep your credit utilization low in order for your credit score to not be impacted by using credit cards. But at this point in time, we're trying to pay off high interest credit card debt in the least amount of time, costing us the least amount of money. So my rule of thumb for utilization on a credit card is usually around 30%. utilization. So if you have a $10,000 limit on your card, I typically would tell someone not to spend more than $3,000 at a time on that card, because it will typically impact your credit score unless you're able to pay it off every single month. But for the purposes of paying off high interest debt via balance transfer, we're gonna transfer over as much as we can to ensure that we can pay down as much debt as possible with the least amount of finance charges associated with it. So instead of following the 30% utilization rule, for the purposes of paying off high interest debt, I would go up to around 80 to 90% of your credit card's limit to ensure that you're transferring over as much as possible to start paying that off. So for example, if you have a $10,000 credit card limit and you have an $8,000 high interest debt that you want to pay off, you can transfer the entire $8,000 over. And with the 4% fee, you're looking at about $400 in fees. So you'll be bringing over the $8,000, and then you'll have a fee of about $400 on top of that. So the new balance on your credit card will be $8,400. And that would be roughly 84 to 85% utilization of that new card, which for the purposes of paying off the credit card is fine. And once you transfer that balance over to your new card, you're gonna want to try to pay as much as possible every single month during the course of that introductory period. So if it's a 12-month, 0% interest balance transfer that you completed, then over the next 12 months, you're gonna wanna try to pay as much as possible towards paying down that debt where there's no finance charges being associated with your account every single month. If you're not able to pay off the entire balance during the 0% introductory period, that's not too big of a deal. The thing that you have to make sure that you're focusing on is paying as much as you can towards that debt during that time frame. And if you make it toward the end of that intro period and you still have a balance, well, you can just repeat this process all over again. You'll go online, you'll research companies with balance transfer offers, and you'll transfer that balance again. And you'll continue to do this not only for this card, but for any other debts that you have that you want to pay off. And once you've completed this process 2 or 3 times, and provided that you haven't added any additional debt to your credit cards, and you've been paying down as much as you can on the amounts that you've transferred over, you'll start to realize that you've been able to pay off a substantial amount of debt in a relatively short period of time, while being able to avoid thousands in credit card finance charges in the process. One thing that I will note is that if you went through this process 2 or 3 times and you still have some other high interest debt that you want to pay off, you no longer have to go out and research credit cards and open new accounts, because you already have 2 or 3 that are still open. And a lot of those companies will offer those same 12, 18, or 24-month 0% introductory rates on balance transfers. So once you've completed this process 2 or 3 times, you'll have 2 or 3 credit cards that you can continue to utilize to continue to pay down that debt over time. I'm telling you, this is the exact method that I utilized in my mid to late 20s that helped me get out of that endless cycle of credit card debt. If you got some value from this video, consider subscribing, and while you're at it, hit that like button. I would really appreciate it. And now that you've paid off all of your debt and you now want to focus on investing in the stock market, make sure to check out the next video.